Hey guys, Beeves here, and today is the start of my Sloop guide series, which I'm calling The Way of the Sloop. If you didn't see my announcement video, this series is going to be a series of in-depth guides about how to tackle different parts of the game while you're in a sloop, whether you're solo or you're with a friend. The topics are going to range from PvP and self-defense to loot stacking and efficiently clearing world events, and there are going to be many topics in between. The guides are going to be a bit more in-depth than the guides that I've put out so far, so whether you're a new player or not, hopefully you'll learn some stuff in these videos. In the first video of the series, I want to go over all of the weapons in Sea of Thieves, including throwable weapons and which weapons are right for the situation you find yourself in. We'll start with the traditional weapons, the guns and the sword. You can equip any combination of two of these weapons, and there are different weapon combinations that you consider running depending on which kind of content you're doing. Our first weapon is the king of close quarters engagements, the Blunderbuss. The Blunderbuss is a shotgun that fires 10 pellets in a large spread. Each pellet deals damage equal to 10% of the player's health. The Blunderbuss can and will one-shot people at point-blank range, making it the only weapon in the game that can one-shot a player outside of a cannonball to the face. Aiming down the sights of a Blunderbuss will tighten the spread somewhat, but I don't recommend wasting a shot on somebody that isn't extremely close to you, as the spread is still quite large even when aiming down sights. The Blunderbuss excels in a variety of combat situations, being able to one-shot players and most skeletons. Carrying a Blunderbuss as one of your two weapons of choice is almost always recommended because of how powerful it can be. I personally consider it to be the strongest of the four main weapons in Sea of Thieves, purely because of the fact that it can one-shot a player. Being able to take a player out of a fight for at least a minute in one shot is such a powerful tool that I never attempt to board another ship without taking a Blunderbuss. And as if being able to one-shot a player wasn't enough, the Blunderbuss also possesses a knockback effect when you hit somebody. If they don't outright die from the shot, they will be knocked back from you and off of any equipment they were using when they were shot. For instance, if you shoot somebody who's trying to raise the anchor on their ship, they will be knocked away from the capstan and their progress will be reset as the anchor will fall back down. You can also knock them straight off of their ship, forcing them to climb back up a ladder if they want to reboard their ship, and making them a very easy target for a follow-up shot. Like I mentioned earlier, the Blunderbuss can also one-shot most skeletons. The only skeletons that can stand up to a point-blank Blunderbuss shot are plant skeletons, who have a passive damage reduction versus bullets, skeleton captains, Ashen Guardians, and Keymasters, and boss skeletons like Grey Marrow or an Ashen Lord. However, the Blunderbuss is still excellent for fighting these skeletons because of how much damage you can pump into them in a short time. You can easily land all 10 pellets per shot on a boss skeleton because of how big and slow they are, allowing for massive damage to be dealt with each shot. Moving along swiftly, the next weapon we'll be looking at is the Flintlock pistol. This weapon is a jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none kind of weapon. It shoots a single bullet that deals 50% of a player's health and damage. The reload speed on this pistol is a bit quicker than other weapons, and it can be hip-fired surprisingly accurately, but that shouldn't really be relied on outside of close range. It isn't much worse than the Eye of Reach, which is the next weapon that we'll be looking at, but it also just doesn't perform amazingly in any scenario. It's pretty quick, the handling speed on it is pretty quick, you aim down sights quite quickly, and it's a ton of fun to use, but since it's kind of hard to aim due to having an iron sight and some weapon skins don't have an iron sight on it, and it can't one-shot people or do massive damage with one shot like the Eye of Reach can, it's hard to recommend it over other weapons, but that doesn't mean that it's bad, and it's actually my favorite weapon to use. It's just the most fun weapon for me, but it's not as great as the other weapons. It doesn't really fit into the meta very well currently. The Eye of Reach is the sniper of Sea of Thieves. It also shoots a single bullet like the Flintlock, and it deals 70% of a player's health and damage per shot, and it comes equipped with a scope. This makes the weapon much easier to aim than the Flintlock, and it packs a lot more of a punch. Oftentimes during a fight, players will be too caught up with repairing their ship or fighting you to heal, and the Eye of Reach will punish them for doing so. This weapon excels at medium to long range, and it can be used at close quarters via quickscoping. This weapon isn't just great against players, however. If a player has gunpowder in their crow's nest, or a skeleton is carrying a gunpowder keg, you can easily snipe it and cause it to detonate from a safe distance. Hipfiring this weapon should only be done under the most desperate circumstances. The hipfire spread on this weapon is so incredibly bad that you can literally be sticking the barrel of the gun into an enemy's face and the shot will still miss. It's wildly inaccurate and should never ever be done unless it's your last option before you die. This weapon is quite versatile and very reliable, making it another very strong choice along with the Blunderbuss. And now we come to the Cutlass, which I consider to be my mortal enemy. I personally have a huge love-hate relationship with this weapon, as it's very aggravating to die to, and it's only rivaled by the Blunderbuss in close range, and it has some very other cool uses that I'll get onto in just a second, and those uses are actually why I love the weapon. First, let's talk about the damage. The sword does 25% of a player's health per hit, and it can hit multiple people or skeletons per swipe if they're close enough to each other. If you connect with a player or a skeleton on your first swing, you can swing again very quickly, and you can combo this one other time for a total of 3 strikes very quickly. If you don't connect with anything, you'll have to wait a second or so before being able to swing again, which can open you up to attack. You can also block another player's sword attacks by holding down the aim button, but the block is a little bit finicky. Sometimes players will just hit you straight through the block, so it can save you, but I personally don't rely on it too much just because of how seemingly random it is. Now there is a secondary attack mode for the sword called the sword lunge. This can be activated by holding down your fire button, and your character will perform a small animation before lunging forward, dealing 60% of a player's health to anything that you hit. If you don't hit anything, you'll be stuck in place for around 3 seconds, and you'll be unable to move or take action. The distance you lunge forward actually isn't very far, and you won't be able to change the direction in which you lunge once you initiate the attack, unless you block first. This is where things get interesting for the sword, because while it has a low skill floor, and it can be very effective at close range, just swiping away at things, it also has a high skill ceiling and can actually take a long time to master. The sword is not just a tool for killing, but it's an exceptional movement tool as well. There are actions that you can take to extend the range of your sword lunge, and allow yourself to move around and better aim the lunge once you've initiated the attack. Firstly, block before you sword lunge. Hold the block button down and initiate the attack. You'll now be able to move around and aim the lunge a bit better instead of being rooted and waiting for the lunge to happen. You can also extend the range of the lunge by jumping just after you've lunged. This takes quite a bit of practice to get right, but it's an essential skill to learn if you're going to PvP with a sword. It's also good for getting away from enemies or behind cover, but remember that if you don't hit anything, you will be rooted in place for around 3 seconds. Sword lunging off of your ship or into water from land will also carry you much further than just jumping into the water and swimming. You'll keep your momentum from the lunge and go quite far into the water. This is great for getting back onto your ship quickly while you're on land, or boarding an enemy ship that is off to the left or right of you. On top of all of this, the sword block also allows you to dodge enemy attacks. While blocking and moving in a direction, jumping will cause you to hop a short distance in that direction. This is great for getting away from another player using a sword, and you can also dodge an enemy sniper shot if you get lucky and time it correctly. Now, like I said earlier, I've always had a love-hate relationship with the sword. It is undoubtedly powerful, maybe a little bit too powerful in my opinion, and I can't stand dying to somebody that's just wildly waving their sword around. But it's also super fun to use as a movement tool, and getting a double or a triple kill with the sword lunge is hilarious. And the sword is a great tool for newer players that haven't gotten used to gun mechanics, or console players that have a harder time hitting shots. No shade against y'all console players. I've played Sea of Thieves on console before myself, and I know for a fact that it is very hard to hit people with a controller in this game. So while I don't use it too often, you should definitely consider using it if you don't feel comfortable with some of the guns in the game, and you can easily replace the Blunderbuss with a Cutlass, as having the extra movement provided by the Cutlass is actually a lot more powerful than the Blunderbuss itself in some circumstances. So those are the 4 main weapons in the game, but they're not the only things that you can use to send your opponents to the Ferry of the Damned. The Firebomb and the Blunderbomb are 2 resources that you can find in barrels around the Sea of Thieves, kind of like, fruit or cannonballs or wooden planks. And they're basically grenades that you can carry a total of 5 of your choice. So you could have 1 Blunderbomb and 4 Firebombs, or 2 Firebombs and 3 Blunderbombs. It's your choice, you can take any combination of 5 of these grenades. The Firebomb is fairly straightforward. It sets things on fire. These are excellent for crippling enemy ships, as the fire will spread fairly quickly and it can be a real nuisance to get rid of. The fires will whittle down player health and will damage ship modules caught in the blaze. A ship that is on fire will actually eventually sink due to holes put into the hull by the fire, although you should never really rely on a fire to sink a ship, since it does take quite a long time to sink a ship on its own. They're also excellent against skeletons. They deal surprisingly good damage to bosses over time, and a single firebomb will kill any regular skeleton. Ashen skeletons are immune to fire, so don't use them against ashen skeletons. I personally love getting a huge group of skeletons to follow me around while I'm at a fort, and then throwing one firebomb at them, and the fire will spread to all of them and kill all of them. This works best on waves of skeletons without guns, since they'll naturally all group up and follow you as if you were playing COD Zombies, and it's also the second best way to kill golden skeletons behind a gunpowder keg, since these, again, will kill golden skeletons, or any skeleton that you find at a fort, in a single throw. The Blunderbomb is a bit less straightforward. This is a grenade that explodes on impact and shoots blunderbuss pellets in all directions. The blast will knock back enemy players and deal light damage to them if you don't directly impact them, but if you do manage to hit somebody with a direct impact, it will deal 50% of their health in damage, just like the Flintlock. If you find yourself having trouble with an enemy player using a sword or multiple enemy players using a sword, you can use these to counter the players by knocking them back. But you do have to be careful because you can also knock yourself back with them, and they will also damage you, and they will damage your teammates. I don't love using these because I don't think that they're quite as useful as a firebomb, but I understand that a lot of people do like using these more than firebombs. I just honestly, I tend to kill myself a lot with these, and they seem to have some weird interactions when you're throwing them on a ship. Like if you're standing in front of an object, such as the map table on a galleon, for instance, and you throw the blunderbomb, it'll just kind of explode in your hand and deal 50% damage to you, which is, it puts you at a pretty big disadvantage during a fight. So I use firebombs more. But if you are having trouble with people using swords against you, definitely consider using these, because being able to knock a person off of their ship, basically at will, is very, very powerful. You just have to be very careful about where you throw them. You can actually fire both of these grenades out of your cannons as well. Firebombs don't really have an additional effect when firing them out of cannons, but a blunderbomb will actually knock a ship away if you fire it out of a cannon and it impacts with the enemy ship. The impact won't cause any structural damage, but it will throw off the aim of enemies shooting at you with cannons, and you can even run an enemy ship into the island if they're close enough and you time it right. You can also just straight up knock people off of their ships by hitting them with blunderbombs fired from your cannons, and it can definitely catch people off guard. Each weapon serves its own purpose, and having a different loadout for whatever you're doing is very important. My personal weapons of choice when I'm boarding an enemy ship or defending my own is the blunderbuss and the sniper. The blunderbuss is too powerful to pass up, and the Eye of Reach is great for finishing off wounded players or sniping them off of cannons if they're shooting at you. Along with these two weapons, I always take 5 firebombs with me. After killing the crew of a ship, tossing firebombs on common spawn points or modules will give you a significant advantage when they respawn. Just be sure to bring a bucket of water with you if you get set on fire. If your job is purely to defend your own ship, a blunderbuss and a sword is a powerful combination for guarding your ship's ladders. And blunderbombs can be great for getting enemies off of your ship without worrying about actually damaging it like a firebomb would. If I'm doing the Fort of the Damned or even just a regular fort, I take a blunderbuss and a sword with me. The blunderbuss can be used to one-shot a skeleton as they spawn in, and the sword is great for damaging multiple skeletons at a time. These two weapons are also great for killing bosses because of the damage per second that they both put out, and because of the fact that you don't need to refill your ammo with the sword like you would have to do with guns. If you find that there are a lot of gunpowder skeletons spawning, then go ahead and switch out your blunderbuss with the Eye of Reach so that you can detonate the kegs far before they get to you, and this will save you from getting blown up, and it can also take out huge numbers of skeletons all at once. If you're having a hard time with the Eye of Reach or you want to be a little bit more mobile, then go ahead and replace it with the Flintlock. I know that I kind of talked smack about it earlier, But like I said, it really is my favorite weapon to use, and it's not much worse than the Eye of Reach. Um, it's not meta right now, I don't think, but it's definitely still fun, and some people have a lot more success with it. So I would encourage you to play around with all of the weapons and try and master the sword, because being able to have that extra movement tool is very, very important. Not just in PvP fights, but being able to get back to your ship faster saves you a lot of time. And, when you're sailing from island to island, it's fun to just sword lunge around your ship and have a good time. So there we have it, guys. That's all I've got for you today. I hope I helped you all understand the strengths and weaknesses of each weapon a little bit more. In the next video, I'm going to talk about ship-to-ship combat and the different types of ammunition that you can shoot out of your cannons to screw with enemies. So that includes chain shots and cursed cannonballs, and I'll probably throw in blunderbombs again in that video. Thanks a ton for watching, guys, and thank you so much for 100 subscribers. We got there a lot faster than I thought that we would, and I know that I say this every video, but it's just blowing my mind that I even got 100 subscribers. I just wanted to make some guides, man, for one of my favorite games, and it's crazy that people are actually, like, watching and interacting with it. I even, I know this doesn't sound like much, but I got a couple of viewers on Twitch the other day, and I was talking with them in chat, and that was just incredible for me. So, thank you guys, like, seriously. And if you want to come and check out the stream, I stream most evenings. We play Sea of Thieves, and I've started up a Minecraft world as well, if you're interested in that at all. But you're not obligated to. I appreciate you watching this video and sticking around this long. So yeah, I think that my next goal for the YouTube video is going to be 500 subs. Um, that would be insane if I got 500 subs, honestly. Alright, I'm going to stop rambling. Again, I know I do this at the end of every video, and I'm sorry, but it's just really cool for me to be able to do this. So my Twitch and my Twitter are both going to be in the description of the video, and I hope you all have an awesome day. Peace.